Of all the problems governments have to tackle, eliminating homelessness may be the most intractable. It requires so many different parts and levels of government working together, and that can be challenging at the best of times. Alison Smith is an assistant professor of political science at the University of Toronto, and she's written a policy paper for Ontario 360 on eliminating homelessness in the province, and she joins us now for more. So nice to meet you and have you here.
Thank you very much.
You know, you said something quite obvious and yet I think quite brilliant in the paper, which is if you want to know how to end homelessness, maybe we should ask the people who are homeless why they're homeless. So let's start there. What do homeless people say about why they're homeless?
A whole host of reasons, really. There was a student in my Canadian government and politics class that I taught at the University of Toronto who was homeless, and for him it was he wasn't living the life that his parents wanted him to live. And so they kicked him out. And I think that's something that a lot of youth experience. With women, it's frequently related to domestic violence. Fleeing a violent, unsafe situation, you frequently have to leave everything behind. So they wind up with nothing, even though there may be a home with their name on the lease. I spoke with a man who was a truck driver for years, who received an inheritance, so stopped working and then lived off the inheritance for a while. When it ran out, he had gotten into some bad habits and sort of spiraled onto the streets fairly quickly. So really a whole number of reasons,
and
maybe
you
even
haven't touched
as many.
on mental health yet, which is another huge reason why people are homeless.
Absolutely. For a small portion of the homeless population that's chronically homeless, there's certainly a high incidence rate of mental illness. And when you think about what life is like on the streets, after a couple of days there, it really does start to take a mental health toll. So,
since the circumstances sound like they are all quite different in different people's situations, does that mean we need a multitude of different solutions to the problem as well?
So there's some things that that we do know that work. So there's some sort of patterns and some policies that we know would respond to a lot of different types of situations. Housing First is an orientation that a number of governments are moving towards, and that does give some control to the person to determine what types of supports they want and they need. So there's some flexibility in solutions. For people who are homeless for a very short period of time, which is the majority of the homeless population.
What's a short period of time?
Maybe even a couple of days, less than a week. Somebody who maybe gets a paycheck on Monday, and doesn't have their next place to live, and so from Wednesday to Monday needs to be in a shelter. Somebody whose friend they usually stay with has moved and doesn't get the lease until the first of the month. So just a couple of days. So that really is sort of a short-term lack of affordable housing option. So there the solution is the cause and the solution is housing related. For other people, if it's more complicated, then there are programs such as Housing First that would allow for more of a tailored solution to people.
We know that Indigenous people are dramatically overrepresented among the homeless in our midst. And you have said in your report that the rest of us tend to be less sympathetic to the plight of an Indigenous person, say, compared to somebody who's, got mental illness issues that they're trying to deal with. Why would that be?
So this is a finding that I did a recent survey of Canadian attitudes towards the homeless population with my colleague Carrie Doberstein at the University of British Columbia, and we found that attitudes towards people with mental illness who are homeless are much more sympathetic and generous. So I had an opportunity to speak with Senator Murray Sinclair, and I asked him this very question. Of course, he was the head of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So what he said was interesting. He said with mental illness, there's been a lot of work done around destigmatizing mental illness, and it's easy for us to see a family member, maybe even we've had some type of personal experience with mental illness. Whereas with an Indigenous population, it's a bit more challenging because there's
we're not them.
Exactly, and we're the other, sort of. It's sort of an otherness, and so that was his response. I thought that was really interesting, and we've had centuries of government policy of displacing Indigenous people from their land and attempting to assimilate. So there's a lot of work to be done to undo that. But similar around mental illness, there has been a lot of work done around destigmatizing mental illness, and so I think that what that does show is that those attitudes can change, and people do have the empathy to be able to put themselves in another person's shoes.
Well, I gather Senator Sinclair said if you want to improve homelessness among Indigenous people, one of the first things you can do is implement the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which he chaired. Certainly. I gather you agree.
Yeah, I do, and it's linked to a number of different issues. I know you're talking about education and youth employment today as well. Certainly, there's a lot of recommendations that would relate to those as well.
Let's put a new idea on the table here. Inclusionary zoning is something that we have heard, and the province has taken some steps to move on. Inclusionary zoning as a means by which more people can get housed, and including harder to house people. Just explain what that is and how it would work.
So inclusionary zoning is a power that has to be given from provinces to municipalities, which would allow municipalities to leverage private developments to contribute to the affordable housing stock. So municipalities in BC have long had this power, and Vancouver has been very successful at leveraging private developments to contribute affordable housing, sometimes asking for even 25% of the units in a new development to be rental and to be affordable. Definition of affordable is often not deeply affordable, but it still does help some people. So Ontario has just given this power to municipalities, which I think for a lot of municipalities is maybe the end of a long, frustrating road, because of course Ontario gave municipalities the responsibility for housing, but then kind of held on to an important means by which municipalities could leverage that. But so the idea would be that in Toronto, all these new developments that we see going up, the City of Toronto would be able to say, if you want to build a development, you need to give us something in return, which is affordable rental housing.
So there is a public policy mission, if you like, built into a new apartment building or a new condo or something like that.
Yeah.
What do you think that would do?
So that should, in Ontario between 1997 and 2016, the Auditor General report stated that there were 1.3 million condo developments and 61,000 rental units that were made. 1.3 million condo ownership units versus 61,000 rental. So if some of that 1.3 million could have been leveraged to get some type of affordability, not even talking about 25% in Vancouver, talking about much less than that, you can think about some of the burden that would be released a little bit at the local level. But the province has put some restrictions on the ability of local governments to use this, notably capping that at 5%, that municipalities can't ask for more than 5%, and only applying
5% of each development project.
And only allowing municipalities to apply this to ownership as opposed to rental. So you could have an affordable unit for ownership as opposed to for rental. So those are some restrictions that really kind of limit this very important power that municipalities could have at their disposal. And there's been a lot of groups in Toronto and across the province that have been calling for this reform for a long time and then have been asking for the province to continue to make a few tweaks to it.
5% of the units of any new development doesn't sound like very much. You think that should be higher?
So I'm not sure if there's a cap in Vancouver, but it could be, I'd like to see it at the municipality's discretion. And there may be some developments where it's not feasible. And maybe that's okay for the municipality to say, in this development, in this location, it's not going to be profitable to give us affordable units. So to do it sort of on a case-by-case basis. But so municipalities are probably the best suited to know what is appropriate and to know how high or how low that should go, as opposed to, again, the province stepping into an area that is kind of municipal jurisdiction, in a sense, in Ontario, and saying this is the amount that the most you can really ask for.
Gotcha. Give me another idea for getting rid of homelessness. What else you want to do?
So I talked about in my Ontario 360 piece, of course, housing is sort of the main piece. But going back to this local level innovation, there's inclusionary zoning, but there's other examples of a lot of innovation that's happened at the local level. So it's maybe kind of a funny piece of advice to give to the government to say, get out of the way. But it really is local level groups that have the best knowledge of what is needed.
They're on the ground.
Exactly, and they're in touch with the homeless population every day. Montreal is only recently starting to discuss opening a wet shelter. So a wet shelter is a managed alcohol shelter where there's some people having been alcoholics for their whole life. Abstaining from alcohol can be very challenging. Alcohol withdrawal is a very physically and a very mentally difficult process to go through. So what a wet shelter does is it manages alcoholism. So every half hour you have a drink that's given so that you're not going through detox, but not getting so intoxicated to the point where in Toronto, of course, there were a few men who died outside in the winter because they had nowhere to go, they were too intoxicated. So Montreal is only starting to think about this. This has been in Toronto for 20 years, so at Seton House. So those are the types of ideas that may at the time seem risky to a government. It might be difficult for a government to say, we've got this new idea that we're going to put into place. But for a community group, there's a bit more ability to absorb some of the risk. And then when there is a good idea, like the wet shelter, then governments can really go forward with some evidence, and you can see in Montreal can really learn from that experience.
Good. Well, we remind everybody that your policy prescriptions for ending homelessness and more than 24 other ideas are all available at on360.ca, which is the website with 30 different policy prescriptions, free advice for the next Ontario government.
My pleasure.
Alison Smith, thanks a lot for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.